before us, we'd like to ask Charles. We recently had a meeting at Meherabad. Charles was there, and it was very sweet, and we love his music, and we just thought that he could set a nice tone and sweet melody for this meeting. So, Charles, would you sing for us?
First met, dying of thirst in a world unknown. With silver coins you paid my debt. How could I help but follow you home? Yeah, you got me drunk on golden wine, gave me a breath and kissed my brow. We walked together, your hand in mine. Oh, dear Lord, I've been betrayed by a lover's kiss. You let me down this garden path. Oh, don't leave me stranded like this. One more kiss. One more couple of wine, that's all I'm asking of you, dear. Your heart and mine, I can feel the power of your love divine. One more kiss, one more cup of wine. Oh, now this thirst has become my life, begging outside your tavern door.
It's a tough act to follow.
Take off, everyone. We wanted to start with the Beloved God prayer, just to remember the one that we've all come here for. Get us sort of,
Lead us.
all right?
Well, let's start with a kiss, pretend it's over. That's first happily married couple at Meherabad. No, it's not. Everybody's happily married. Okay. We're married a year and a half. We're going to have a question and answer series. Thanks for having Charles sing up there because it gave us time to fill out our notes on what we're doing over here. I just want to see how we're billed over here, so stick with me a second. The Gary and Mehera Show. Gary and Mehera will be joining us live from Ahmednagar to share stories about their life in Meherabad during these changing times, and will share their experience of how it is to be newlyweds in God's home. Silly and serious, always heartfelt and entertaining. It's the Gary and Mehera Show. Actually, with John speaking, it was when he said about this thing, about staying in touch, and something about the community being together. That's sort of our central theme today of people living in a community, people needing a sense of community, and no matter how divergent we are with Meher Baba and the Meher Baba story, how there seems to be an inherent need to work through the process of togetherness, that we are all each other's helpers, or a term that I know, Upa Gurus. Meher Baba, the ultimate guru, but we play a role of gurus in each other's lives by helping to climb the rungs of the ladder to him. So for us, it's, for me personally, and it's a changing time in that we're married, we're living a life together at Meherabad, and it is a changing time, like John said, like if you come back from India and say, wow, the community is changing there. The leaders who were the pillars of our world are dying. And it's sort of a time that's become incumbent on us to carry our own torch, our own flag, and take the lead in the storyline of uncovering that diamond that is within us. The imagery that comes to me is that we're just a blob of rock, and inside is the truth of Meherabad, our state of oneness with everything. And the outer force is the personality that wants to just, go to great restaurants, have fun, and do whatever. But underneath it all, there is just a relentless force that wants us to come back to our own true self. So, in part, we're going to talk about how the process of community helps us do that, and community could be as small as two people getting married to each other, to a congregation like we have here now, to a storyline of Meherabad, just the changing dynamics. So I'm going to turn it over to Meherabad.
You are, huh?
We're going to go back and forth on this rolling mic.
We went back to India this last year, and I've gone there on and off as a kid to visit or to be there for 6 months. But it's really different for me being there, thinking that I'm going to live there. It's really different, and also being married. And for me, whenever I went to India before, I always went because I wanted to be close to the Mandali, because I wanted to be close to Meherabad, the God-man. I wanted to be in touch with that life, like it was still, I could still get a fragrance of that. So that's why I went. And now that I have gone this year, for me, it's totally different. It's like a different chapter. It feels like a different chapter in the Baba community to me. It feels like a different chapter in my own life. A lot of people at Meherabad are talking about how it's a really different time. With Erich gone, there seems to be something that's really different. Meherazad's, they don't have the energy to give out. And it's a real time for us personally, and I feel a lot of people sort of going, wow, it's just us. We don't have Erich living that great life. I mean, there's people who are alive, as alive, and different. But for me, it struck me this year, it's just like, it's just us living our life. We may be in Meherabad, we may be in LA, it doesn't matter that much. It really is incumbent on us to take our own stories and see what we need to do. And it feels like in Meherabad there's been a giant sense of that, of a change time. And there's a time of like, what do you do? Well, people when they came to Meherabad before would go out to Meherabad all the time. And now there's a real sense of an open space of what are we going to do? What can we do as brothers and sisters there together who are coming for Baba? And it's a real question mark time. So that's been a lot of what this year has been about for Gary and I. And also our own process of trying to figure out, what do we want to do there? What's meaningful to us? How do we be a married couple who's thinking of having a family there? And how do we... You know. So... Okay, I'm thinking about having a...
Is this a trick meeting?
So, that's sort of what I feel that's happening in our life and what I feel that's happening in Meherabad. And what we felt prompted to come and share with you. And also really pinpointing that feeling of like, this is it. Like, we're it. We are a community. Whether we like each other, we don't like each other, there is a sense of we are a community together. Especially out at Meherabad, where it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. You're a community with have to rely on and work with and try to get along with and try to figure out what you want to do. And Meherabad's also changing in many ways because people are moving there with the new buildings that are coming up, new people wanting to come and live there. It's a real changing time. So that's what we've been working on a lot this year. That's what we want to tell you about.
We're going to have a brief moment from God Speaks, which is, I don't know if I've ever read it cover to cover, but it is my favorite book. It is the love song of the beloved, and the middle part is really hard, but the beginning and close is the best thing that's ever been written. I was studied. It is. Actually, I'm going to read you the first sentence, which is just an unbelievable thing. First sentence. All souls, Atmas, were, are, and will be in the Oversoul, Paramatma. To me, I studied in college psychology, comparative religions, different forms of thought. To me, this is so unbelievable, and the fact that Meherabad isn't more popular in the world, just from people who read stuff, it's just like, that means we are, were, and always will be one with God. It's just, however it seems in our little world of illusion, whatever we're going through, that we're separated, but in just one line, we are always one with God, which to me, Meherabad then has the authority anyway, but when he says, don't worry, be happy, just like, you're always here. You're in this dream, whatever this middle ground is going to fill up over here, you always are, were, and will be part of the Oversoul, Paramatma. That is, I don't know if anybody else gets off on philosophy, but it's just as a concept, it's the most brilliant thing in the universe. So we go from there, somewhere here, to the end of the book, which, although Don Stevens doesn't like it because it's credited to Erich Jesawala, the last part, Baba gives credit to Erich for writing chapters 9 and 10 is just the conclusion. And some people say that, hey, we got to concentrate on Meherabad. Erich himself says, the pen was mine, but everything else was Baba's. So I also love this conclusion. It's part of something that gives me a lot of juice. Conclusion, part 10. God cannot be explained. He cannot be argued about. He cannot be theorized. Nor can he be discussed and understood. God can only be lived. Nevertheless, all that is said here and explained about God to appease the intellectual convulsions of the mind of man still lacks many more words and further explanations, because the truth is that the reality must be realized and the divinity of God must be attained and lived. To understand the infinite eternal reality is not the goal of individualized beings in the illusion of creation, because the reality can never be understood. It is to be realized by conscious experience. Therefore, the goal is to realize the reality and attain the I am God state in human form. Thank you, Meherabad. So, for me, as I was saying, that sort of ties into a don't worry, be happy state of mind. And some of you have heard, and sometimes I throw in, it's just like, at some Baba functions, I like to say that I came through a troubled childhood, troubled in the sense that my family was part of the Holocaust. My mom, or my dad was, my mother was in Stalingrad. There's a lot of funky emotions and crazy stuff that was in the mix and the masala of the story. And I just feel unbelievably fortunate that I found Meherabad and the structure of the community of Meherabad, which does work for me. I love being at the Pilgrim Center, meeting people just feeding from the give and take of what community is and how it feeds me and what I want to give back to it is a tremendous thing. So I always say that if I could be happy, anybody could be happy. Just like I got a lot of garbage in my story, and I do feel that Meherabad helped clean up and sanitize that garbage in a way that allows me to be free and happy and enjoy the ride. And like everyone else in this room and everywhere, I get lost in my own mishigas and insanities, but that override and just seeing of sort of the 30-year surf on Meherabad's waves, that stuff happens, movement happens, that unlocking of the door, the opening of, let's say, making some chisel marks into that stone is something that is perceptible. It's not like I'm not claiming any heights, but all we want to do is just stay in that state of chiseling away at the rock. So the comfort through Baba's words, the philosophy, the ideology that I am already in that state of oneness. It's just my gariness that's in the way. And sometimes I like to be lost in the gariness. Sometimes I go, oh, it's too much. Just go, get out of here. And that push-pull game with myself, I become comfortable with. That wherever I am is okay, and it's okay in a bigger sense. I'm not taking a political stance that there's a war going on somewhere and one day this planet's going to blow up and somebody did this to an innocent person. It's all just playing out, and whatever are my reactions, that's just Gary responding to the stimuli that I see. But there is some growing detachment that it's just the show of God that's unveiling. It's like, this is my version of the Mahabharata that's unfolding to me, and I'm good with it. Sometimes, as I say, I act out and get lost in it, and sometimes I withdraw. But I am eternally grateful to Meher Baba for what he has shared with me. And sometimes if I argue with somebody about God Speaks or use my little intellectual wiliness on concepts, I am aware that when I debate ideas and philosophies, that for the most part, I'm stealing the concepts of Meher Baba to argue against him. That whatever I know and whatever tools I do have in my toolbox is what Meher Baba has given me, and whatever I've adapted and did something, if I could claim on my own, it's because he taught me how to chisel and whittle, and I'm just chiseling and whittling away my time. So that's my little addition. Keep chiseling?
Keep chiseling.
So I'm just going to keep chiseling with that thought, Mayor, and why don't you tell them more personal things? I'll get real later.
One thing that we did this last year on a more practical note is, I've been looking at Meherabad and think, okay, this is my home now, this is where I'm going to live. The Mandali are, in essence, for me, pretty much at the end of that chapter. That chapter's gone. So it's basically, it's just us in that way. The tomb's there. And for me personally, I love the tomb, but to me it's like Baba's anywhere. He could be there or here. Some people really have a sincere, they get really energized. I love that space, but to me, Baba's just as much here or any place else. It's not any closer to me. I don't have that experience. But I do have an experience where I love being with people who love Meher Baba. I like that feeling. And so for me, there's that question of, what are we going to do? Because a lot of the things that we went there for are falling apart. A lot of the Meherad's falling apart, people are dying, things are ending and closing, and, you know. So one thing that we've been trying to do this last year is, how do I feel connected to Meherabad? And what can I do in Meherabad that brings what I love, you know, through that sense of channel of what do I naturally love? What do I love to do? Where do I love to be? What is my connection? You know. So one thing that we did is this last year, we had something called a community meeting in Meherabad. Charles was there. And we invited the whole community. We invited residents, including Indians who live there, including Meherabad Trust Office. Everybody was invited. Mandali, anybody. It was like the whole community. We are the community. So it was after the Pilgrim Center closed. We had it in the Pilgrim Center. And we decided to have a style where there was like a Quaker meeting style, where if you felt moved to say something, you could raise your hand. And everybody got 2 minutes, only 2 minutes per person, and people could say whatever they wanted. And we sent out an invitation which was welcoming people to sort of be more honest, like how do you feel? Do you feel we're in a transition? What does that mean to you? How do you feel connected? How has it changed? How do you feel relations between residents are and pilgrims are? What do you want to do here? Why are you here? What is things that actually ask provoking questions that are sort of get at the gut of things a little more. And people came. We 100% people came. We realized that people there craved that sense of a space to be able to share with each other and hear each other. And a lot of people were skeptical, a lot of people were afraid, I think. And people came together, and Charles played music, welcomed people, and it was a really loving environment. It was a real trusting environment, and people would just speak. They would raise their hand one after the other, and we passed the microphone around, and they would share whatever they wanted to share. And for us, there was a sense of like, it was something that we could do that was about a new beginning instead of the sadness of things dying. Things are ending, it's over, it's blessed, it's gone. So for us, that was really important. Like I felt like I need to do something like that in order to feel connected there and excited about there and, you know, something I can put my energy into. And it was really hopeful, and it was really beautiful, and things, people said wacky things, and people said sincere things, and people said vulnerable things, and it sort of put these things on the table. People were sharing things, and then we'll see where it goes. There needs to be more steps that are taken. It was just sort of like a first step. People said this had never happened before at Meherabad. And I think also there's that sense with the Mandali there, in their strong presence, they were so phenomenal that it's like, why not go to them for advice for everybody? Everything you wanted to get from them their perspective. But without them there in strong health and able to play that role, it was really a time when people could stand up and say something from themselves and what changes they wanted to make. And it was really inspiring for us. And it really meant something to me, and it gives me inspiration to go back there and want to do something, and want to create something instead of just wanting to receive something. Like I wanted to receive from the Mandali some great wisdom. I wanted to receive from the tomb. I wanted to have a good time. I wanted to feel closer to Baba. So there's something like, okay, what can we do? And it was an important thing that happened up there for us. That's all I
I will add something about that. What was in my mind is that a bunch of years ago, I'm sitting with Erich at his work table back there, and he looked at me, I must have had this puzzling look or something. He says, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "You know, Erich, I really love you a lot, and I'm just thinking that to the degree that you were a slave of Meherabad, and you say that your life is not your own, that if he told you to take a gun and just shoot Gary, you'd just do it. I mean, I wouldn't do it to you. I wouldn't shoot you. You just shoot me." And he just looks, he thought about it, and he just slowly just goes, "Yeah." That not, he just nodded that that's a fact, who I am. If he told me to shoot you, I'd have to do it. So I just sat, and there's other people sitting around the table, and they just went on with some trust work or something, and in the middle of talking to somebody else, he just stops, and Erich had a great stage presence, and he just goes, "But why do you take it like that?" And some minutes had passed, and what's he talking about? And he just looked at me, and he says, "If he," meaning Meherabad, "if he told me to shoot him, I would shoot him too." That it depersonalized for me, like, hey, we're buddies, you don't shoot, buddies. Friends don't let friends kill each other, man. So what I'm driving at with that point is that he was an unbelievable person, that he really gave away his life. It was not his own. Whatever consequences would result from an action that would even be out of bounds in the normal world, it didn't matter. It's not my life. I gave it to you, and whatever you tell me to do, I do. But I'm just trying to say that I am not that person. Therefore, I differentiate between things. That in my life, I'm looking for things that have a connectedness to Meherabad, have some effect that in my mind makes me think I'm my own little Michelangelo chiseling away at my rock. But to do that, Meherabad provides a tremendous vehicle, and as a place, it really works for me and I think us. Partly because America, although a great place, it's actually, there's so much, Meherabad said, there's so much great energy in America, there's so much liveliness here, but I think in their movies, but much of it is misdirected, or that's whoever is talking, Meredith Starr, much of it is misdirected, and I have come to redirect it. That for us to be at Meherabad, there is little differentiation between work and play. Just like, let's say, if I'm at the Pilgrim Center talking to pilgrims, which is a joy of my life, is it work or is it play? If let's say if I'm playing volleyball with the pilgrims, is it work or is it play? That just going out to dinner with John Page, if he's out there, is it work or is it play? Just like everything is interconnected. That's part of also my growth vehicle in my life there. So that gives, so there are changes in that, but it still gives me, it works so well for me. But now, let's say in the past, there was a lot of, it's okay, we can handle it. There was a lot of part of my day that used to be filled by, let's say, wow, going to see Erich, spending a little time, and wow, just being with the Michael Jordan of the inner court. It was just a tremendous joy. And now that's changed, and in a sense for me and Mehera to get married and team up, I realized that it's great for me to work in partnership. That I always thought I was more like, in some ways, a lone wolf, but to work in a partnership with somebody that really dovetails, that takes aspects of weaknesses of my game, which, let's say, like Mehera likes to talk practical, I like to talk philosophy, that I could talk ideas all day long, and she's saying, what are we going to do about this? I go, oh, we got to do something about it? She's like, well, what do you mean? So it just, let's say, so if we're talking community, she says, well, why don't we rent a building or something and do a community center? Let's do community projects. Let's do different stuff. So those aspects that were once theoretical become actually practical and manifest. So in some ways, in many ways, in joining up with Mehera, there is a newfound joy that I could not just get off on thinking about things, but there's a new discovery that you could actually do things, and it's fun too. So this year for us, me specifically, was a big deal in that we made preparations and rented, and right now I'm getting emails about this house that we're fixing up to do a community center, and a lot of it was spawned and birthed with together, but Mehera had a big impetus in that, and I feel that a big thing that's going to happen in our community over there is that people will take charge of their own lives and do things that are not just limited by what is trust sanctioned, or let's say here is the trust program and here's what you could do and here's how you could fill your role there, that people are going to say, oh, here's what's good and works for me. And so we have things that we started doing by volunteering at the school, which is a trust school. We were teaching English to kids, and Mehera was teaching art. We traveled around India looking at different programs that people had in NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, and different things in a social work capacity that was going on. So to me, I'm only saying that because each one of us finds our own way to fill 24 hours of each day, and we all somehow manage. When whether we go to bed at 9 or at 6 in the morning, somehow 24 hours passes by and we did whatever we did. So for us in our dance together, we are finding ways to be creative in spending time that allows us to feel good about ourselves, to feel good that somehow we're in that storyline with Baba and the Baba community. And it's, for me, a continuing pleasure to have the resource of Meherabad to do that in, because even though sometimes some people go, wow, Gary, you've been here 25 years, what do you do, or how do you spend your time? For me, I am eternally grateful for the opportunity that came knocking at my door, and for whatever reason I was lucky enough to open it and walk through, because without it, I'd be carrying a lot of baggage, which Mehera's helping me get rid of, literally, and I'd be having a lot more internal stuff to deal with. Meherabad and that community did a lot for me. So I'm just, again, reiterating the theme of what a place and people, in although divergent ways and divergent personalities, somehow just loosely connected through the link of Meher Baba, whatever is each person's view of Meher Baba, which could be way radically different than mine. But in that togetherness, it helped forge transformation. And I'd love to hear from Mehera about some ideas at community centers, or what you want to do. Because I can only learn about it through this meeting.
One of the other things that I've done, and I'm more the practical, this last year, Gary and I at the end of the year, this Untitled Chapter, I go, oh my God, I've never done so little in my life. Like, in America, you're like, fast. I'm like, I've never done so little in my life, because we processed and worked through stuff and this. And Gary goes, I've never done so much. We're working on each other. But one of the things that is in a practical note, just on my side, is one of the ways that I love to connect to Baba is through art and through creativity and through people. That's a lot my medium. So when we were at Meherabad at first, it was really hard for us. It was hard for us to come there as a couple, because Meherabad's not a real marriage-friendly place. It's not a real relationship-friendly place. It's a pretty lone wolf place so far, although that's changing. So we had to break into that and make our home, make a home that was different for us, and figure out how we were going to be there, because Gary's had set patterns for 25 years. I've had set patterns there, coming back and forth. And how do we make a home and a life for us there? So one of the things, practical things too, is, and then we looked at Meherabad and we thought, Gary loves it. It's his place. It's his life force. He loves it. But also, it's changing for him too. A lot of that life of Erich, particularly, that gave meaning, is gone. And so one of the things that we decided to do, we started looking at the trust, and we thought we wanted them to do stuff for us, or what programs could they do. But they're like an organization that has so many things going on. It's sort of, they might not do what you feel is important to get done. So one of the things that we did is we thought, we don't have to be limited to the trust. We can do what we feel we want to do here. So this is real big for Gary and I to break out in this way. And what we did is we rented a house right by Meherabad, right down the road. You know where that is? About a kilometer from the Pilgrim Center.
Cyber Cafe.
Right by the Cyber Cafe. Right on that side. There's a nice big 2-bedroom house, 2-story with a giant meeting space, 2nd floor, big room. And we rented it. We have a 5-year lease on it. And Gary and I rented it together to create a community center. We thought, that's what I want. That's what I'm craving. Other people seem to be craving different things. So let's just do it. So what we're going to do is we're opening this, next year we're going to be starting it. We're going to do things like different art programs, open studio project, creative writing workshops, discussion groups, like discourse groups, and anything that has a sense of like creativity and life and being able to come together and create things. I want to work with people who are Easterners and Westerners from Hostel D and Pilgrim Center. We want to do a program with the local Arundel kids. I was teaching them on Sundays, have them come through the school and work with them, teaching them English. Gary and I did this last year, doing English and helping them in their studies. And also doing art projects and creative stuff with them that they don't have a chance to do. And also we want to do sort of cottage industry program with the sort of women in the village, teaching them some sort of craft project that they can earn some money on their own, and they can be in their own home and watching their kids and doing their things and earning some money and getting some sort of project on their name. So there's that shift in saying what can we receive and what can we get and what can we do to get there. But there's that time of like, for me particularly, I got to create what I love and create how I feel connected to Baba and create what my path is in this space that's really changing and really open. And we're going to do that for pilgrims and for residents, have a community garden that people in the residents there can have food that they feel good about, and bring that sense of we're here, all we've got is each other, and be able to connect in Baba through creativity and being together and remembering him through action and through life and through service and through but that's really big for us to actually do something that's not in that program of Meherabad set program, but say, hey, we can do something else. So that's something we're going to do, and that's something we also really want a lot of feedback from, because people come there on pilgrimage, and Meherabad filled up so much time before, and now that programs aren't really there of going to Meherabad all the time. So that's another thing that we want feedback from people of like, what would people love to do? And that's something that we're really inspired to see what we can do to help facilitate that. So that's what we're excited about, and that's what we want to go back and try to put our action and energy and love into.
This is our first public meeting together. How are you driving so far? Call up 1-800. I think the community of Meherabad is changing in that Mehera said before, like we got people living in condos, and actually besides this community center, Mehera and I just rented a condominium out there, and we have I have my little room at Meherabad. Whatever. The point is that, let's say, just a few years ago, or right before I married Mehera, it would have been inconceivable for me to say I will live somewhere off of Meherabad property, because just the unseen boundaries of like, this is Meherabad, and you're holding up the flag, and this is sacred land, and then somewhere in Jamestown out there in Condo Village, you just seem like, whoa, that's way out there. That's in the valley, man. So those boundaries are being erased or reshaped. There's a little gerrymandering on what's going on, and there's people. I hope I'm not outing you, Mr. Ramsden. There's people who are going to come and work and participate in the life of Meherabad that will not just be limited to people, hey, we're like pioneers, that there's going to be some people there for 6 months or some months, and they are going to participate in the community that we're all intertwined in. So that actually opens up a lot of really good possibilities, because it adds to our, I don't want to say incestuous gene pool, but it actually dilutes the pool a little bit. The more people, the more diversity there is, and the more of a chance for good things to happen. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is that, to me, it's such a funny thing. I've been coming to Baba meetings for 30 years, and we almost have, it's almost like a carbon copy, we touch base, a little Baba, a little something. There's just like, it's almost like the same people. I always say that it's sort of like the python swallowed us with the head over here, and we're somewhere in the middle. It's just like the same people are just going through the body of this python. Like, here is Meher Baba, the greatest messenger, he said himself, this Advent will be the greatest. And I'm just going like, why can't we get anybody to hear? Not that we have a sales force going out to pitch Meher Baba, but it is amazing to me how few people have nibbled and bit off of the forbidden fruit of God Speaks or whatever. What I find interesting now, as a little sociological point of view, that a lot of new people coming to Meher Baba now are coming through alternative groups. Some of them have connections through some kind of channeling, some kind of storylines that, and I'm saying this very neutrally, that have an occult presence that Baba somehow is guiding people from a branch that is completely different than the branch of the tree that I would say, I'm not speaking for everyone, but most of the people that I know in the Meher Baba story sort of are part of the base of Baba and somehow one of the branches of Mandaliism, just saying that in a good way. But I think we are going to witness an explosion of people coming to Meher Baba from completely different branches of the tree that were initially conceivable to our gang as we know it. So that will also change in time. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that will change if that happens, which it is already. We're seeing the baby steps of that in Meherabad now. But that will change the nature of the storyline. There'll be people who, let's say, for the most part, let's say I feel very brotherly and sisterly, with everyone in this room. There's some kind of a comradeship, and I have a recognizability with your Baba. There will be people that come to Meherabad now that we start moving away from brother and sister to cousin to some kind of more far out links that in the universal Baba manifesting, I can say for myself, I will not know and recognize everybody who comes through the door of Meher Baba. That initial force and wave that connected me and many of us to our set and our community, I feel will be changing. So how that affects and interfaces with us in our life, that'll be an incredible thing, because it is possible that the changes will be so overwhelming that the Meherabad that I know and was talking about how much I loved will be changed off the face of the earth for me. So that's one of the dynamics that is possible, and I'm just thinking, I say to my friends all the time, just like, isn't it unbelievable that how Baba is just under wraps, that the nuclear force, whatever Saddam Hussein is hiding, it's nothing as good as what Meher Baba is hiding. You're just like, how the hell? He's got the message right here and other aspects, and like, nobody has found it, and just go, wow. So whatever Baba will use, or whoever, in bringing himself or unveiling himself, or whether we might want to use the metaphor that it's sort of like the avatar comes and like a sort of spiritual Johnny Appleseed just puts the seeds out there and they grow, whether the tomb and Meher Baba's name, whatever, could be forgotten, but those seeds will take fruit and blossom, and they are a force that just is unstoppable. But I do believe that Meher Baba is for everyone, and what he offers, that knowledge of you are, you were, and you always will be in the oversoul, everybody is craving for that information. And it's not just limited to a select few, just like in Jesus' time, a few people, the disciples are sitting around and just go, hey, is this just for the Jews who are circumcised, or could everybody take part in this? That there's always a small gang that wants to keep it for themselves, and the explosion of the magnitude of the unbelievable force of the avatar just breaks forth in an unbelievable way. It's just like Muhammad the Prophet, almost this amount of years after his passing, like Baba, 33 years afterwards, they're on horseback and camelback in Spain and just created an empire that was just unbelievable, that was just sustained by their love and belief in the force of the avatar. So I do believe, and in a sense it would be cool to witness, to be part of the witness program, to see Meher Baba's majesty manifest and that message to be shared. When I was younger, it used to be a cool idea because I thought it would validate to my parents, like, you see, I was right, you see, I backed a winner. Now, it doesn't really matter. I mean, not from that point of view, but it would be great to see Meher Baba and his message of love and truth spring forth into life, and just watch it transform humanity. That is maybe wishful thinking or whatever, but that is part of a honest looking forward to in my life that says, hey, whatever years I have to share in my story at Meherabad, with my wife, with my friends, that to see Meher Baba come into this world, and in a sense, his name be known to more than 30 people in Los Angeles, or whatever number, would be a real cool thing. So, to share. Over to you. What we maybe, what would be nice is to ask, Mark Brutus is leaving? Everybody, wasn't it nice to have Mark Brutus? Fred, we are, Greg Long leaving? Lisa Long leaving? Thank you.
I have something to do with that short attention span.
We hope the clapping woke up Ralph Brown, though.
I was in the zone.
I have a question.
Yes, signore.
Instructing people or telling people about Meherabad's life when they come to Meherabad or Meherabad. Is there something structured to where a pilgrim now won't have maybe a Mandali to go to, but is there someone that can walk them through the steps? This is, so much about Meherabad's life, and also Meherabad. Is that ongoing? If somebody is more or less taking pilgrims by the hand?
There is a, I thought I was going to channel an answer to when Fred was asking. I was going to go, wait, Fred, don't ask. Lakers in 7. There are systems in place, there's tours that, let's say, what appears to be happening right now, the personalness and the care that the Mandali used to put in to sharing the story of Meherabad is becoming depersonalized. Because, in a sense, nobody really lived that life. So for me to tell you what Erich did and what his routine was is a little, it's awkward, that let's say to tell somebody else's story who was there to tell the story. So it is a historical, both places are historical sites, Meherabad and Meherabad. So there are people who will tell you that this glass was used and this was the copy that God speaks that Baba touched and this was his chair. But it is a different day and age that as people do historical tours, I mean just for myself and I think for all of us, there's a world of difference between being at a place with the people who lived the history and then somebody else telling about it. So that's just what is. That's just a fact. There's nobody else who lived it. But organizationally speaking, there's thought given and there are procedures and tours and information stuff that exchanges that take place. But if you've been sort of like me almost from the beginning of that transition of Baba to Mandali time, the only bigger transition was when Meher Baba died and they went to Mandali time and they thought that was an infinite abyss to cross. And now, like Erich, Mani, all of them used to say that, what do we do now? Just like, you'll carry on like we did. What do you think we had to do after Meher Baba passed away? So, but to me, it is an incredible change because we know stories, we know information, but let's say to have Erich say something, he was unbelievable because he didn't just tell a story, he lived the life. He was present he and the story were one. There is a big gulf between Gary Kleiner or somebody else telling a story and then not really being able to live up to that level. Let's see what I got. Quick, a bulletin just in. I got a note from my co-producer here to say that but I did feel, this is a personal thing, because Mara always tries to get me off the philosophy and onto the personal. And when Erich passed away, I felt there was the sadness of missing the man and just the greatness that he held, gave, and shared. But in his passing, there was also an opportunity for me to rise to a new level of my own gain that was not possible, or I did not grab that opportunity while he was around. I always felt like a kid with him around, that he was an adult and I could be a spoiled kid, sometimes a bright. To live up to our greatest challenge. And before we were having this community meeting at Meherabad, somebody was saying, some people were pessimistic and they were saying, no, Meherabad can never change, we're just locked in, and this is not like this, and just like, it can't change. And we're like, does anybody ever read God Speaks? I mean, do we believe that you believe that Gary or everyone in this room will become one with God, but we can't change enough to say, hi, good morning to each other? It's like, isn't it incredible? We're going to become God, but I can't learn how to say hello. It's unreal how stuck we get. So, I believe that opportunity does exist for us. It's just like, just because the Mandali are gone, it looks like, oh man, we're just going to sink down to a lower level, but somebody is going to come up with a game face, and somebody is going to lead in some way, and just going to go, then let's say, I'm not talking about myself, but let's say like a St. Francis-like figure in our Baba story is going to emerge and just go like, I don't care what anybody thinks, I don't care if they think I'm crazy, somebody is going to really put their heart on fire for Meherabad. And that opportunity is ever present, and it doesn't matter whether the Mandali are here, and it doesn't matter whether Meherabad is here. The joy, I think, of being with the incredible character of a Meherabad. I was just like, wow, would I love to have that experience? It's just like, that's pretty cool. But we all will chisel away our rock one way or another, and the way we chisel it and how we choose to chisel it is just our story, and everybody is writing their own tale. What did you have, Mehera? Where did you put it?
Also, do they
Yes.
still serve popcorn and donuts?
More importantly, yes. On Mondays, speaking on behalf of Mr. Alan Wagner and the kitchen committee, Monday at tea time we have popcorn, and on Fridays at tea time we have donuts. Still the best, since we had a slightly weak season last year. I just want to say, for $2.50, you can still stay at the Pilgrim Center. Basically, for the cost of just getting there. After that, have the time of your life. Yes, ma'am.
So, Gary, since you were kept 2 minutes, I understand.
Yes, I was.
What were some of the suggestions? Are there any hack conclusions even that came out, or is that still to unfold?
No, very interesting. Good question. Yeah. What's that? It was sweet. Ted, at halftime, because the meeting went for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then we stopped for drink and bathroom break, and in the middle, Ted comes over to me, and Ted, very dedicated and just diligent in his work, and somebody made a suggestion that since this community meeting was for the greater community, people who are living even in town, just Baba lovers, that we are a community of Meherabad. It's not geographically specific to Meherabad, and it's not, I am Indian, I am a foreigner here, that we are a community of Meherabad and our lives intertwine. So somebody who was living outside of Meherabad said, but you're saying that this is a community, but there's no way for us to get any information as a community, that you guys have like your residence kitchen and you have a bulletin board at the Pilgrim Center for Pilgrims, but we as outside members of the community, we don't have any access to information, that we're in the dark. That it would be great to just share information to show that we're a community. So at halftime, Ted says to me, he goes, yeah, let's do it. Like, what am I going to do? But he said, let's build a bulletin board where people can come and almost like as a symbolic step that we are a community, and there is like an open forum to just put, there's going to be a Charles Gibson concert, or there's going to be Mehera's going to teach a painting class or something, that everybody's welcome. So he said, I haven't heard because we left a couple of days after the thing, but he said, I'll get it built and to have at a place that is accessible to everyone, a board, or, that will not get damaged in the rain, that just allows people to access information. So that was very interesting. A lot of people, but it was more, let's say, symbolic. It's a step towards community.
Like, let's do it immediately. So we're taking action on it immediately.
What would you like to? I'll tell what I said. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I told the people that because it was 2 minutes. I had a couple of points, and you can time me on this one. I said how happy I was to participate in the life of Meherabad, and that my life at Meherabad has taken on a new level and a new meaning since I got married to Mehera. That besides my decision to come to India and live to the degree that I can be said to have a dedicated life in the Meherabad story, that to team up and partner in that story is the greatest decision of my life. And I said, and I just added that we should all remember that those of us who live in and around Meherabad, that Meherabad exists as a historical place dedicated to Meher Baba, and the reason our lives have meaning here is because we have the chance, the opportunity, and privilege to interact with the pilgrims. The people who come on pilgrimage are the people who give meaning to our lives. That if we not think less of our own comforts and our own storyline of what we want, but are able to just see that our life choice is completely interdependent on pilgrims coming there, that community and other things will more naturally fall into place. That is what I share.
It was nice because it was nice. But what was nice for me is it raised a lot of different perspectives. Some wacky, like everybody should. Sorry, this is mine. I think this is wacky. It doesn't mean other people. Everybody should be mandatory. That everybody goes to RT. To ground them up and make sure it's mandatory. Or to all sorts of different things that people said. But it was, the nice thing I felt was that it was like an opening. People felt safe to be able to bring different things to the table. People raised things like, we're all getting older. What are we going to do? It's basically, the age groups of 50s and 60s are getting into another 10 years they're going to be getting into their 70s. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with elderly people like Virginia Small? Or people raise questions about sexuality and how does that play out in relationships at Meherabad. And I raised questions of family, about having a kid at Meherabad and what would that mean. And I raised issues about money, like people coming there to volunteer and live, one of the things is there's a lot of young people, a few young people my age or younger than me, who want to come and stay there, but they don't have careers. So they live off a really small amount of money. Or, how are we going to do that when we encourage young people to go there and be able to dedicate their lives there? But just raising a lot of questions, raising a lot of hearing people's voices, hearing people's perspectives. And the nice thing I felt was afterwards people were really excited and they wanted to do different things about it. Like, let's have discussion groups based on these different issues. Let's put up a bulletin board. Let's have these meetings where we can air issues once a year. Let's do something where we can bring East and West together because they're pretty separated there. So that sense of like that spirit of people craving to do something. And also people who are real skeptics, and because we would ask everybody individually in the meeting would say, I'm so grateful this happened and I really hope more of this happens. So to me it was a real sense of like, even when people are scared and they're uncomfortable or they're hurt or they don't know if it's possible, it's like people crave to feel love with each other. People crave to have some sort of way of expressing themselves or sharing.
I just want to thank you guys for sharing this because what's going on in the community in Meherabad also happens in other communities like here. I mean, especially in Los Angeles. I know in the past we've had community meetings that have been, a lot of people have felt good about others and time with. And how to bring our community together is something that I ask myself often, and it's important that we do. So this is really good. So thank you.
Well, it's okay that in the sense of our goal, Baba did say that, what's the way to love him is to love those you can't love. And those you can't love are oftentimes the ones close to you, or the ones in your community, or the hardest to loving somebody. So it's a very, and Baba said when he dropped his body, really the essentials will be in the hearts of his lovers. So that's really our job, with each other.
You feel that? That's my mother-in-law. She usually handles me. What's going on?
I'm working on it.
I'd like to. Thank you. That's good. Oh, baby. No? Oh, whatever. I want to add into the pool that it's an interesting thing. When I first was a Baba, when I first came to Baba, I was part of the Baba group in Chicago, and it was one of the best Baba groups that ever existed. It means just taking a poll, just like a lot of energy, vibrancy, just like tremendous love, loyalty lines between the people. And then in traveling around, including living in India, and traveling around seeing a lot of Baba communities and just places, centers, that there was always a touch of sadness for me that we did not learn how to function well together to foster that growth and movement, to push forward, to stick with my metaphor for today, to chisel away at the rock, that we don't have to become best friends and go dancing together, but with the great fortune of having shared Meher Baba, and I'm not blaming anyone or saying I have any solutions, but there is a sadness that we didn't find ways to use the force of Meher Baba and make it more active in our lives. So like I said, meetings become more like repeats, and they're just like, in some ways we're stagnant, and I hope I'm not sounding like I'm bitching and moaning, but I think as necessity is the mother of invention, people will find ways to fill those needs. And there is, whether dialogue in LA, Meherabad, the world, and not just in Baba communities, people seeking community and finding, using the force of love, which allows you to trust the process to move and grow and to release the baggage that we're carrying. So it would be a joyous thing to see us as Baba people, through our kinship of Meher Baba, offer love, mirroring, and togetherness to just keep pushing our story forward towards our own inner goals. So that's a hopefulness out of my heart, but I am not the Pied Piper of that dream. It's just, I always say, like from 30 years ago, there was sadness that I could never match those feelings that we had in Chicago, because I was born, my nascency with Baba was in a group that provided that, and then I spent, even at the network of Meherabad, I could never duplicate the joy of the kind of togetherness that we had there. Any other questions? Yes?
Something that just keeps like pushing inside of me to be said, so I think I better say it, is that I talk with friends in the Baba community, with people at work, my patients. They all talk about this isolation that we feel in LA, and if you come from like the East Coast or something, well, it's a hard time, everybody's far away, and you don't connect the way you do maybe in other places. It's harder to make community. People feel isolated, and I just was thinking, it is harder here for whatever reason. I want to get to the Baba Center, but you got to get in your car and manage the freeway. And I'm afraid to even say this because I feel like I'm supposed to do something about it. There's so much on my plate, but maybe we need to be aware of that, and that we need to make that extra effort and break through that, whatever that is, the energy that happens here in LA, to kind of get our community feeling more connected, because I feel disconnected from it. In the same way I do, friends, and it's not so easy to make that effort. Maybe it's really important for us to do that here. This was a place that Baba visited several times. If there's something here, it's up to us to keep it going, to really make it buoyant and alive. So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that.
Keep coming back, it only works if you work.
My suggestion is that next year either you come back and give us an in-person update, or you help Diane make a long article on everything you're doing, so that we keep up with it. And throw a big party. At the community. How many people are in the community?
At our meeting, there was exactly 100 people, and some people were out of town, and they sent proxies to be read at the meeting. So let's say, and some of the people at Meherabad, like Mayor Jesawala came, but the Go Hair and the ladies didn't come, although Mary wanted to come. But let's say if she sent a proxy, but if you roughly, I would say, let's just call it like Meherabad's number. Let's go 120 and 2 female appendages. Means if you take the Ahmed Nagar Baba lovers, there's a little more. But so in that general sense, if you tie in Nagar, let's say 200. But around Meherabad, specifically around Meherabad, with the people living in condos, some of the Indian members who may have moved from Delhi or somewhere and bought a house, and started their life there. Just for a round number, it would be closer to about 100 of us.
Who is gerrymandering?
What is gerrymandering? I like to answer that.
Politician from Chicago.
Yes.
I was going to ask a question too. Can you comment on some of the comments other people made? Was John and Dolly there?
Did
Did they have something you could share, or do you remember what they said?
We met with Dolly beforehand because one of the things we wanted to do is try to make sure it wasn't just Gary and I and a couple other Westerners who were sort of coming up with this idea of change, and we weren't including old-time Indian Bible lovers and different perspectives. So we checked in with Dolly, and she was really helpful, and I think some of her frustrations and concerns, she has a lot of concerns about the tomb or her different things that she cares about. It was nice to be able to talk to her about that, so she loved it. And in the meeting, it was interesting. Before the meeting, Joel was really sort of upset, because he was like, oh yeah, I don't come to the meeting, but I have other things going on, and he was really sort of dismissive of it. He didn't really understand it very well. But when he came to the meeting, he really listened. Everybody really listened to each other. And he raised his hand towards the end of the meeting, and he cried. He cried in front of everybody, and he just was moved to tears sincerely. And he said he just was remembering this line, Gujarati line, I think, from the Gujarati arti is my understanding, that was how fortunate we are to be here. Something in it moved him, but it wasn't sentimental. There was a real sincerity in it.
Very deeply touched in that moment, just saying that here's Jal, we know to be a buoyant character, and he just started crying and saying that every day I repeat to myself this line from the Gujarati arti, which says, "We have no idea how fortunate we are." Just as he started shaking, he started crying, and we just, there was a loving support in the room that normally in a meeting where here's a trustee or whatever, people have to keep up a face. So the beauty was that at this meeting, just figuratively speaking, if anybody came packing, they left their guns at the door, and there was enough openness for vulnerability that here is one of our community leaders to cry, but in a healthy way, to just say, hey, let's just remember the great fortune that we share, and then in whatever steps that we take to come together. So, it was very sweet.
Both of you mentioned a difference in perspective from the Westerners' point of view and the Easterners' point of view. What is that, and does that meaning help?
One of the things that sort of makes the setup of Meherabad is, and the nature, I think, of all communities, different people find like-minded and separate, but people tend to go into their little groups that they connect to. And I'm going to answer it through sort of talking about something else. One thing that I started with a few other young people 2 years ago, it's happened 2 years, this will be the 3rd year, is the Young Adult Sabbaths in Meherabad. And one of the things that was the most successful and the greatest thing about the Young Adult Sabbaths was that we had Easterners and Westerners, young people, coming together to do the Sabbaths together. And during the Sabbaths, that was the best thing about it. And I got to know Indians. I didn't know a lot of these people, because a lot of the Indians come for short holidays and then leave, pilgrims, or they stay at Hostel D, and it's really hard to get to know them. They're in some ways different time schedules and different. So through the Young Adult Sabbaths, the young people got to know each other, and it was great. And also that pointed out, in my experience, that how distant in some ways the Hostel D group and the Pilgrim Center group and these different things are, because after the Sabbaths, we would sit together and play music together and do things together, and it was so much fun. And we realized how that was sort of naturally sort of separated by you like this sort of food, and you, this is the Pilgrim Center, and it's more Western catered, and so there are some divisions that are there. But there's a sense of, it's no different than divisions that are naturally inclined in terms of, the old-time residents and then the newer residents, and there's young people. Well, there's a sense of, like, divisions and things. But that was one thing that was really important to us with the young people, trying to break down that sense of division between East and West.
I like the feel of it. I think what would be surprising to maybe many of us is that, let's say, sometimes again, I'd be around the edge and somebody would come, let's say, it's me, and I'm bringing my son, hi, Eric, and he'd say, hello, Gary, and there's somebody, this is my third son, and he wouldn't even introduce the person by name, that this is son number 3, it's almost like a Charlie Chan movie or something. No, I'm not making fun of this at all, that there is, or somebody would come for the first time and they'd see Erich and they'd say, dear Baba Erich, sir, I am from Hyderabad. That not like, let's say, like, if I showed up, I'd go, hi, I'm Gary Kleiner, right? You must have heard about me. So there is a difference in how you view yourself, either as a part of a group, or we who perhaps see ourselves as individuals. So it's always very interesting to me that the holiday for us that we have of Amartiti, the passing away of Meherabad, where somewhere, let's say, 20,000, 30,000 people from India show up, and we got our regular plan of 200 Westerners there, that, to me, part of the force of what people from India and an Eastern perspective, I think, enjoy, is to be part of a big wave, that there is something, the concept of Mela, and we're together, and it's not like, you might wait 8 hours in line. I'd go like, who the hell wants to wait 8 hours in line? It seems crazy. But to be a part of a collective that is bigger than you is something that it seems to me the people, Eastern origin, India, love, and it's very culturally identifiable and easy to slip into that milieu. Whereas we Westerners, by habit and choices the way our society bred us, are constantly looking for new ways to individuate and show off our individuality. So at times, those two divergent perspectives come out in clashing ways, but not, I don't mean to imply anything big, but there are different ways that we do have cultural differences. Shady?
So you've had this great beginning with a good discussion and the bulletin board happening, and I'm sure some other things. What's the next step? Do you know what that is yet?
You're the next
One thing that we did is, we left a few days right afterwards, so but one thing we did is, there was a lot of ideas, everybody had ideas, and we sent around a questionnaire sort of thing. What worked? What do people like? What would people want to do? Do you want to be involved in it? What is something that's like naturally birthing up? And and Gary and I don't necessarily have to be a part of it at all. It's like there's a feeling in the air of this sort of change. It's not like we're just sort of addressing what we've felt and making that format, but there's a lot of people talking about it. So that was basically our next step, is bringing together everybody's ideas of what would people like to do. And when we go back, and over the summer people are there, and they're just gathering all of these ideas. And then from there, we'll see what that next step is. We'll see, where is that energy? Where is that? And in terms of us, for us, our next step is trying to do this community center, which integrates hopefully Easterners and Westerners, and creativity and discussion groups this thing, and services the residents in different ways, and that's our way that we know how to do. That's something that we want to do to address that sense. So that's our next step, and then we want to pay attention to what other people are doing.
I'd say we have some energy that's been generated by that, and we want to invest in that and roll with it. And like all things, either it's a first step of a beginning that goes up the ladder, or you fall off and fall on your face and wait another X amount of time before you take another bold move into the unknown. But I'd say at this stage, Mehera and I are committed to sharing in that process and with that energy around Meherabad. What specific form it takes, we'll see. But it's an incredible thing that in anything, I'm not really, watching somebody like Gandhi, just one guy. Let's say if somebody has a committed force to something, there is an unbelievable energy that can manifest. So for all of us, it's just like, and I think this could be our ending period here, that it's not like me and Mehera want to say, oh, this is what we're doing and we're on stage. All of us, it sounds like in the room, it's an idea whose time has come for all of us to chisel away at our rocks, to use the love resource of the community of Meherabad. So it's a great pleasure and privilege for us to be in and just go like, wow, cool. We're here in LA. We're sharing with people in the love fest of Meherabad. And like Karina said over there, and periodically we get an update report on what we have done. And it's just like, so I'm just saying from my heart, I hope we all have a great year, and I hope we all take great strides to unlocking the door that allows the beloved to come forth into our everyday life here. So thank you for sharing this with us, and we're happy to be here. Jai Baba.
You want to do a song? Sure. That'd be great.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, which used to be more days like with Erich and some of the other Mandali, you basically got on the men's side, Balma too, a little bit under the weather, he's out. You go to the porch, you say hi to the women Mandali. Come back on all those days, you have lunch, a little tea time. Bhau comes out 2 days a week to give talks at Meherabad. There's some other people, Sam Karawala gives a talk, sometimes special guest people who met Meherabad. Movie night on Friday night, popcorn and donuts, not to be forgotten. Volleyball, and that's evening arti. There are tours of Meherabad, and there is people go to school tours. People still, we give them information if somebody wanted to go to Baba-related places like Aurora Caves. Narayan Maharaj's place, Babajan and Pune, just different little related things. So, and a lot of the time, and let's say initially, even Erich used to say, no, it's just, what are people doing? Just sitting around on the porch smoking? That in a certain way, it has come to be accepted that somebody just, I'm making fun of smoking, just sitting around on the porch smoking and talking to somebody, that it all is also part and parcel of the process of just birds of a feather flocking together in the pond of Meherabad. So just that camaraderie that you would need a car to get into in LA to meet, you could just hang out on the porch and just be one of the guys or one of the gals.